Wrecker finally snapped out on the last episode of The Bad Batch, and I think it's one of those things that needed to happen to move the story forward. I'll tell you why in my discussion, but there's really a lot to unpack from this episode, so let's get into it. What's up, y'all? My name is Prince, and I'm an urban acolyte. This is going to be a discussion for the Bad Batch episode, Battle Scars. Real quick, before I dive into the discussion, I want to say something about the last video on the Bad Batch. Look, man, y'all got to be careful about responding to the titles of the videos. I laid out all of the story threads in the discussion, and I asked when we would get a plot that would bring all of these individual storylines together. And I think a few people missed out on that because of the title of the video. But one of the things that I mentioned in that video was that I felt like Rex would be in the next episode, and he was. One of the things that I left out of the video was that Wrecker seemed to always have something going on with his head in the previous episodes. He'd either hit his head, had a headache, or he had some kind of a concussion thing going on. Well, both of those things happened in this episode, with Rex showing up and the issues with Wrecker's head reaching a climax. Now, I don't do the whole episode review and breakdown thing because, that's basically what everyone else does who's covering this show. But we do have to talk about what happened in the episode briefly in order for us to get into our discussion. So Rex shows up there at Space Carla's spot on Ord Mantell, and he gets all twitchy when he finds out that the Bad Batch all still have their inhibitor chips. They set off for the ship junkyards on Braca to find a decommissioned Star Destroyer with its med bay intact so that they can perform the procedure to remove their inhibitor chips. Wrecker totally spazzes out because his inhibitor chip finally comes online, and he's pretty much trying to carry out Order 66 on the rest of the Bad Batch, Rex, and Little Omega. Now, I felt like this whole thing needed to happen because of where the story might be heading. Think about it. Their inhibitor chips didn't work when Order 66 actually went down, so this would lead to the Bad Batch becoming traitors to the Empire, like we've seen with the story. Now, right now, Rex is working with someone. We don't really know who. Rafa and Trace were in communication with Rex, and they were the ones who told Rex about the Bad Batch from the previous episode, Decommission. Now, from the way Rex was talking, he's part of a fledgling rebel cell looking to restore the Republic. But right now, we don't know who that is. A question we'll have to hold on to is what happened that caused Rex to have to go into hiding for about 15 years until Kanan and Ezra go looking for him for Ahsoka. Now, the end of this episode made me feel like we're finally going to be advancing the story set up in the first two episodes of the Bad Batch. Now, at the end, when Rex and Hunter are talking, a member of the Scavenger Guild is spying on them. Now, we know from how things went with Cal Kestis in Fallen Order that the Scavenger Guild on Braca is quick to drop a dime on someone and call the Empire. So I feel like the Bad Batch has been flying under the radar while they've been doing jobs for Sid on Ord Mantell, but I think they're going to have problems from Crosshair leading a squad of death troopers, and if Fennec Shand is working for the Kaminoans, like I suspect, she's going to also be in pursuit of her bounty, which we all assume to be Omega. So I think these little tangential missions and side stories we've been seeing in the first half are all about to converge into whatever the main storyline is. My hope is that when everything comes together, we will find out what makes Omega so special. The Kaminoans were talking about a superior clone project, and I'm wondering if Omega is actually the prime subject. I still think that Omega is probably Force sensitive, but I think it was an accident. I don't think it was intended for her to be Force sensitive, but the fact that she is a clone of Jango Fett's means that the Kaminoans would like to see if they can repeat that process. The genetic material of Jango's has degraded, so they can't repeat the process of creating another Omega. But if they had Omega herself, then they could just try to clone another Omega from Omega. Does that make sense? Now, I've been talking about the idea of Omega being a Force-sensitive clone based on a story that I came across about two Force-sensitive clones who fought in the Clone Wars. Now, I finally came across the source of that story on Wikipedia. It was in the handheld game Star Wars Battlefront 3 in the campaign mode. The mistake that I made was that I thought these were clones of Jango Fett's, and they were not. The Kaminoans actually cloned a Jedi Master from genetic material that they'd collected years before they began to grow the clone army for the Republic. The Force-sensitive clones were kept a secret, and as far as anyone knew, they were regular first-generation clones. Now, of course, there are other stories of clones created on Kamino, like in The Force Unleashed, and all throughout the EU or Legends. Even now in the canon timeline, we have Palpatine creating clone hosts and clones to rule by proxy in Snoke. We've even got human scientists working for Kamino to do whatever experiments Moff Gideon has been overseeing for the Imperial Remnant, and possibly even Palpatine himself. So I think it's possible that the Superior Clone Project could be the start of all of that stuff, and it would connect the Bad Batch to the Mandalorian and to the sequel saga. So how Wrecker flipping out moves the story along is this. Now think about it. If Omega does turn out to be Force sensitive, you wouldn't exactly want the Bad Batch to spaz out and go into Order 66 mode. The other thing is, well, we know that there are other Jedi out there hiding. I actually think that if Omega is Force sensitive, she might not be the only Force sensitive person that we see in the Bad Batch series. One of the directors said that the next episode is supposed to really be something else, and we'll have to wait and see what he means by that for now. Anyway, I'm going to keep tuning in, but I'm hoping something big happens to get folks excited for the story and where it might be headed. I don't know how long the Bad Batch is supposed to run, but I have a feeling that this first season could be a lot like the first season of Rebels, where it felt like it was all over the place in the beginning. The story started to really come together after the Empire Day episode, and by the time Ahsoka showed up at the very end of the finale, I knew that people were going to be watching Rebels for season 2. Maybe things will get cooking here before the finale, and if they do, well, I'll be here for it. So also be on the lookout for my discussion on the first episode of Loki, and also stay tuned for my follow-up to the Off the Dome video I did on the Black Superman movie. But anyway, y'all, that's all I got for this one. Y'all keep on breathing, and may the force of others be with you. Always.